Welcome to Night Stories from VHS Era. You've arrived at a place where the glow of old television screens, the hum of rewinding tapes, and the softness of forgotten childhood dreams come alive once more. Each night will take a quiet journey back in time to sleepy suburbs, moonlit driveways, warm summer breezes, and the kind of memories that feel just a little too magical to be real. Here you don't need to worry. Just press play and let the night unfold. Before we begin tonight's story, let's take a moment to slow down. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it gently. And now, exhale slowly through your mouth. Let the day melt away with that breath. Again, breathe in deeply. Feel your shoulders soften. Now, release and let go of everything you don't need to carry right now. Imagine you're lying on a cozy bed in your childhood room. Outside, the wind hums softly. The light from a small lamp glows like a warm memory, and the sound of a distant VHS tape spinning fills the air with comfort. You are safe. You are still. And the night is yours. Let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Night Stories from VHS Era. I'm truly happy you're here with me tonight. So before we begin, let me ask you something. Do you remember the soft whir of a cassette tape spinning inside a Walkman? Did you ever use a pencil to rewind? A tape slowly, carefully, just to save battery life. And what was it about those quiet moments, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a mixtape in one hand and a Staedtler pencil in the other, that made it all feel so special? Stay with me until the end of this video, because tonight I'll take you on a journey through time, back to a quieter world where every song had to be earned and every battery bar mattered. By the end of this chapter, you'll not only remember how we rewound tapes to save our Walkman's life, you'll remember why it meant so much to us. I think I was about 13, maybe 14 the first time I held a Walkman in my hands. It was one of those Sony Sport models, bright yellow, water-resistant, with buttons that clicked softly and a little window where I could see the cassette inside turning slowly like the heartbeat of a machine. I remember how my fingers trembled slightly when I pressed play for the first time, the headphones snug against my ears. The sound was imperfect, yes, grainy, a little muffled, but to me, it was magic. It was freedom. Back then, we didn't have Spotify or endless playlists. We had Tapesmaxel, TDK, sometimes those clear Memorex ones on it. They had sides. A and B, you had to commit to a side. And when the music ended, you had to rewind it. Not instantly, not with a button most of the time. As if your batteries were running low, and they always were, you had to do it the old-fashioned way. That's where the pencil came in. I don't even know who taught me. Maybe my cousin, maybe I saw it at school, or maybe it was just something we all seemed to know. Passed around like a whispered spell. You take the tape out, grab a pencil, preferably hexagonal, not round, so it wouldn't slip, hand inserted into one of the tape's little spools. Then slowly you'd turn. Click, click, click. It was like meditation. Each twist of the pencil was a promise that you'd get to hear your favorite song again without draining those precious AA batteries. Did it actually save that much battery? Maybe not, but it felt like it did. The feelings mattered more than facts back then. It felt like we were part of a secret club, a generation of kids who understood that rewinding with a pencil wasn't just practical, it was ritual. And if you've ever sat by the window on a rainy Saturday afternoon, twisting a pencil through a cassette as the world outside turned gray and quiet, then you know exactly what I mean. There was something beautifully analog about it. The way the tape wound back with soft resistance, the slight tension in your hand, the sense that you were physically connected to the music you loved, not just emotionally, but mechanically. You could see the tape move, feel it respond to your touch, and when the song started again, it felt like a reward. Not just for waiting, but for participating. For taking care of your music, I had a mixtape called Summer Vibes 96. I made it myself. Recording songs from the radio, praying the DJ wouldn't talk over the intro. You remember that pain, don't you? That frustration when your favorite song finally played, but the host decided to throw in a weather report right over the first verse. And still, I kept it. I labeled the cassette with a piece of masking tape and a blue Bic pen, and rewound it by hand so many times the case eventually cracked. But I kept listening, because that was my summer. Right there in plastic and magnetism, my friends and I used to sit on the porch, trading tapes like treasure. Did you get the new Green Day album? Check this. I recorded Wonderwall from WPLJ last night. We'd pop open the Walkman's door, slide the tape in with a satisfying click, and press play like it was a sacred ritual. And when the music stopped, maybe halfway through, No Rain by Blind Melonweed, all reach into our backpacks. Pull out the communal pencils and start winding. It was so ordinary, and yet, looking back now, it feels almost mythical, like some secret code from a lost civilization. The Walkman, the pencil, the hiss of the tape starting up again. We didn't know we were living through the end of something. We just knew it felt good. So yes, that pencil trick. It worked. Gave us a little more time, a few more songs, and the gentle reassurance that we could keep listening just a little longer. And in a way, I think that's all any of us ever really wanted to make the moment last. To rewind time, even if just a little. Now, do you remember the feeling of flipping a cassette to side B? Do you remember how careful you had to be, not to let the tape crumple or tangle? And did you ever write little notes on the cassette cases, decorating them with stickers or doodles? Those are the questions for next time, because there's so much more to remember. But tonight, as you drift off to sleep, I hope you can still hear the sound of a pencil softly turning, and maybe, just maybe, the faint echo of your favorite song waiting on side A. There was a moment small, almost imperceptible, that I miss more than I can explain. It happened after you pressed play on the Walkman before the music began. That soft mechanical click, followed by the gentle whir of the tape rolling into motion. It wasn't music, not yet. But somehow, it was already part of the song. A quiet, analog prelude. A little breath the machine took before singing. It's funny how silence can have texture. And that particular silence, right after clicking the play button, carried an anticipation that nothing digital has ever been able to replicate. The click told you the machine had accepted the tape. The word told you the song was on its way. And your heart especially if it was a song. You'd waited all day to hear skipped in rhythm with the mechanics. Did you ever press play and lean in close, just to catch that tiny mechanical sound? Did you ever try to memorize it, or wonder what exactly was making it? And wasn't there something about that pre-music moment that made the first note hit even harder? The whir had a soul of its own. It was the sound of magnetism coming too. Life, the physical act of information being read. You could almost hear the little wheels turning inside, gears moving, the tape sliding gently from one reel to the other. Each movement made a promise. Something beautiful was coming. You just had to wait another second or two. And what a sacred second that was. I used to press play and sit perfectly still. Headphones snug against my ears, eyes closed. Sometimes I'd even rewind a few seconds just to relive the beginning. There was a particular kind of magic in the build-up. That moment between pressing play and the first real sound, usually a bit of hiss. Then the faint rise of a guitar or the gentle hum of a keyboard was like the opening of a curtain. The theater of my imagination was about to begin. There was one mixtape I made just for myself, no one else, that started with Tracy Chapman's Fast Car. I remember recording it late one night, sitting by the radio, timing it just right. I'd waited hours for the DJ to announce it. My finger hovered over the record button, and when the song finally came on, I hit it so fast that the beginning of the tape still had that satisfying clack from the buttons being pressed. I kept it that way. Never tried to re-record. That little sound became part of the track. And now, every time I think of Fast Car, I don't just hear the opening chords, I hear the click. the whir, the hiss. Then the music, it was like being eased into another world. A world where music wasn't instant, and that was the whole point. We weren't spoiled for choice. We weren't skipping songs halfway through. We listened, fully, completely. The machine demanded patience, and that patience gave us depth. Sometimes, especially with older tapes, the whir would be louder. A slow, gravelly roll like the Walkman was tired, and I'd talk to it quietly as if it could hear me. "Come on, don't stop now," I'd whisper, gently tapping the side with my fingers. There was a relationship there, strange as it sounds. A trust between kid and cassette player. If you treated it gently, it might just keep going through. Your favorite song? I remember evenings after school, lying on the carpet with the headphones on, rewinding just enough so I could relive the beginning of a song, just to feel that click again, that whir, that calm mechanical sigh. It was a sound of comfort, of routine, of everything being just as it should be. Do you remember how the tape hissed softly in the background, even when the music was loud? That ever-present reminder that this wasn't a sterile, perfect playback. It was warm, flawed, alive. We used to say you can hear the tape breathing, and in a way it was true. Every Walkman had its own unique sound. Some had a more distinct click, others a deeper whir. Mine had a little vibration you could feel through your fingers when you pressed play. It felt like it was waking up, like it had stories to tell. I'd press play and imagine the tiny motor inside yawning and stretching, ready to roll out whatever song I had waiting. And when the battery started to die, the whir would slow down. You could hear it labor. The music would start dragging, warping slightly, like it was underwater. That was your cue it. It was time to find fresh AAs, or accept that your listening session was over. But even in those moments, I found beauty. The imperfection, the fragility, it reminded you that the music wasn't just floating in the air. It came from somewhere real, somewhere moving. There was something almost human about the way it all worked. I can still picture the light scratches. On the plastic surface of the Walkman, the little finger smudges on the play button, a sticker I put on the back, a smiley face that had faded into a ghost of yellow. And when I'd slide open the cassette lid, I always did it slowly, like I was opening a treasure box. Inside was that familiar rectangle of black plastic and clear windows, and I'd give it one last turn with the pencil before pressing it in. Then came the click. Then the WHIRR sometimes, especially at night, I'd fall asleep to that sound. Not even the music, just the gentle mechanical noise in the moments before it began. It was soothing, like a lullaby made of machines. And now, so many years later, I find myself wondering, how did something so small leave such a lasting mark? On our hearts? How did the click and whir of a simple cassette player become part of our emotional memory? Why do I miss it so much? Maybe because it was ours. It's the sound of our time, a little mechanical whisper that told us, you're here, you're young, and your song is about to begin. Next time, talk about something just as magical flipping. The taped aside be that small, deliberate action, that moment of choice, and what it meant to treat music like a story with two sides. There was a time when simply walking around the block felt like a movie. All it took was a pair of headphones and the right song. Suddenly, the cracked sidewalks of the neighborhood weren't just sidewalks anymore. They were the setting of something important, something personal, quiet drama, or an unscripted adventure. And I, with the cord dangling from my jacket pocket, was the main character, lost in thought, eyes on the horizon. Footsteps matching the beat, it didn't matter where I was going. Sometimes it was nowhere, just walking to walk. A slow loop passed. The park, down the hill, back up toward the corner store, then home again. But the music turned everything cinematic. The way the sun hit the bricks on the houses, the rhythm of car tires against the road, even the way the wind picked up leaves and carried them across the pavement. It all seemed choreographed, like the world was dancing with the soundtrack only. I could hear. Some days, I'd pop in the tape, put on the headphones, and let the Walkman rest heavy in my coat pocket. I'd zip up to keep it secure, then step outside and press play. Immediately, the outside world faded. Not gone, just dot, dot, softened, muted. Life became background to the melody. People talking on porches, dogs barking behind fences, the occasional rumble of a distant lawnmower. All of it blurred behind the music, like extras in a film set. And I walked on, shoulders relaxed, hands in my pockets, mind adrift. My neighborhood wasn't glamorous. We had rusted mailboxes and paint-chipped fences, potholes that never got fixed, yards that looked tired from too many winters. I walked with music in my ears. Everything transformed. The ugly parts became poetic. The flaws turned into texture. The ordinary became charged with meaning. Sometimes I'd choose a tape based on my mood. If I was feeling heavy, I'd put on something soft and reflective. If the day was warm and open, I'd play something upbeat. Fast drums for fast walking, long instrumentals for wandering, ballads for staring into windows and imagining stories behind the curtains. The sidewalk cracks were like punctuation marks. In my thoughts, I'd walk over them, lost in lyrics, stepping in rhythm, sometimes mouthing the words without realizing it. There were afternoons when I didn't even notice how far I'd gone until the tape clicked off and the music stopped. That sudden silence, sharp and cold, would snap me back to reality. I'd take off the headphones, look around, and wonder how. The world kept moving while I'd been floating somewhere else entirely. There was a hill near my house. I used to climb just for the view. It wasn't that tall, just enough to see the tops of trees and the curve of the main road in the distance. I'd stand there, headphones on, and let the song build as the wind brushed past my jacket. That was my private theater, the clouds rolling. Overhead, the distant hum of traffic. The way the late afternoon light made everything gold. And the music, always the music, lifting it all into something bigger than myself. I remember one fall afternoon, especially clear. The leaves had turned and started to scatter across the sidewalks. I was playing a tape with a mix of melancholy tracks, and as I walked beneath the branches, they rained down little flakes of orange and brown. The sound of the tape hissed gently beneath the song. The rhythm of my shoes hitting the pavement lined up with the beat. And just for a moment, I felt like I was walking through a dream I'd once had and forgotten. There was an alleyway the first used to cut through, narrow and quiet. Most people avoided it, too dim, too overgrown. But with the right music, that alley felt like the secret passage in a story. I'd walk slowly through it, headphones on, the song echoing between the fences. Sometimes I'd pretend I was in a different city altogether. Paris, Tokyo, someplace far away and imagined. My neighborhood transformed again, and I didn't need a plane or a passport. Just music, even the ordinary moments passing mailboxes. Watching cats dart across driveways, seeing someone water their garden, felt different. When you've got music in your ears, everything becomes significant. Every gesture feels timed. Every shadow carries weight. It was like walking through a memory I was still making. And there were those magical moments when the music and the world synced perfectly. A song would swell just as I turned a corner into golden sunlight. A lyric would hit just as I passed by something that echoed it. It felt like life was speaking to me through melody, like the universe had timed everything just right, just for me. I think that's why those walks mattered so much. It wasn't just about movement, it was about perspective. The music helped me see my world differently. Not smaller, not boring, but full of story. It's full of quiet beauty and overlooked moments. I wonder if that's something we've lost. Now, with everything so immediate, so perfectly curated and shared, we forget how sacred those private experiences were. Back then, nobody saw my walk. Nobody heard the song in my ears. It was mine. The walk, the wind, the music, all of it a conversation. Between me and the world, and even now, when I walk down those same streets, so much older, the muscle memory kicks in, I can still feel the weight of the Walkman in my pocket, still hear the faint hiss before a song, still remember how the world looked different with music guiding my steps. There was a certain kind of silence you needed before starting a mixtape. Not the kind of silence that filled a room, but the kind inside you'll like a pause before something meaningful, because making a mixtape wasn't just recording songs. It was building a message in secret, track by track. Every song chosen said something you couldn't quite say out loud. It was about feelings you didn't know how to express, memories you wanted to immortalize, or stories that only made sense when told through music. You didn't just pick your favorite songs, you picked the ones that fit. Songs that had a purpose, a beginning, a middle, an end. The first track had to hook the listener without trying too hard. The second was usually smoother, more emotional. Somewhere around the fifth or sixth, you'd insert the deep one, the kind of track that slowed everything down and made the person really listen. Then you'd end on something meaningful, but not too heavy. Because even in silence, you wanted the memory of that last note to linger. It could take days. You'd sit on your bedroom floor surrounded by jewel cases, cassette sleeves, torn liner notes, and scribbled playlists. The stereo would be on low, headphones plugged in, and you'd rewind certain songs over and over just to be sure they belonged. You'd listen closely for transitions, how one song faded out and how the next one began. The goal was to make it seamless, like a wave cresting and falling, carrying someone gently from one feeling into the next. If it was a tape, timing was everything. You had only so many minutes on each side, usually 30 or 45, and you'd calculate to the second, writing tiny timestamps next to each track name. If you miscalculated, the last song might cut off mid-chorus, and that was almost unbearable. You'd erase and re-record if needed. You'd wait for the exact moment to press record and pause at the same time, timing the release just right, like a pilot guiding a plane onto a narrow strip of memory. There was something so sacred about the silence between songs. Those 2 or 3 seconds where you knew something else was coming, but you didn't know what. That space carried anticipation, like holding your breath just before something beautiful. You wanted every person who listened to feel that, even if they didn't realize why. Making a burned CD was a little more forgiving, but not less important. The technology changed, but the intention stayed the same. You still agonized over the track list. You still gave the disc a name, carefully written with a black Sharpie across the silver surface, sometimes with hearts or stars or cryptic doodles in the corners. And then came the jewel case, insert the handwritten playlist. The pen smudges, the uneven lines, each one evidence of the care you put into it. I made tapes for myself when I needed to feel understood. I made tapes for friends who were moving away. I made one for someone I had a crush on, choosing every song like I was handing them pieces of my heart, one lyric at a time. I remember slipping it into her locker and walking away without looking back. I never asked if she listened to it. I hope she did. The best part was knowing that someone, somewhere, would hear your tape alone, maybe late at night, or while staring at the ceiling, or on a long drive. Then they'd feel like you were there with them, like you had reached across space and time and said, I know what this feels like. I felt it too. That was the power of a good mixtape. It wasn't just music, it was connection, intention, vulnerability. Sometimes I think about all the mixtapes that disappeared. Lost in drawers, cars, basements, covered in dust or forgotten at the bottom of a box. But maybe one day someone will find one, pop it into a dusty player, hear that familiar hiss and click, and then suddenly be transported back to a time when songs meant more than background noise. When music was curated with soul, when someone took the time to say something through melody, verse, and rhythm. Creating the perfect mix meant listening with your whole heart. It meant understanding flow, emotion, timing. It meant being patient enough to wait for the right track. Even if you had to rewind a dozen tapes to find it, and when you finally finished, when you played it back from start to finish, it felt like reading a diary you didn't know you'd been writing. And if you gave it to someone, that was everything. That was trust. It was like handing them a box of unsaid words and hoping they'd open it gently. After the final track faded out and the burn was complete, there was always that moment of quiet celebration. You'd press the eject button and gently lift the warm disc from the tray, holding it by the edges like it was a relic from a sacred ritual. It wasn't just a CD. Not anymore. Now it held something personal, something alive. Now it needed to name its own identity. I always kept a black Sharpie close by, sometimes blue or red if I was feeling bold. And that's when the next phase began, the labeling. You didn't rush this. You sat back, sometimes cross-legged on the carpet or at the edge of your bed, holding the disc in your hand like it was glass. Then came the pause. That small moment where you looked at the shiny surface and asked yourself, what is this called? What name fits this feeling I just created? It could be as simple as Summer Mix 98 or Drive to the Lake. Or maybe it needed something more poetic-like for when it rains, or you might not know this, but I love you. Some CDs didn't even need titles. You'd just start sketching. Little stars, broken hearts, fire symbols, lightning bolts. Sometimes song lyrics would sneak in, curling around the edge in tiny, uneven writing. And other times, you'd draw a pair of headphones, a smiley face, or your initials next to theirs, pretending it didn't mean anything, even though it meant everything. I remember once I made a CD for a road trip to my cousin's place 3 towns over. I wrote open roads and late thoughts in big letters across the top, then drew a long highway winding across the bottom, disappearing into a little cartoon sunset. It didn't have to be perfect. It just had to feel right. And somehow that crooked sunset and wobbly lettering made it even better. It was flawed. Human, real. The best part, no 2 CDs ever looked the same. Some were minimal, just a word or two. Others were covered edge to edge in doodles, dates, and scribbled messages. I knew people who would layer glitter nail polish over theirs, or spray a little perfume on the liner notes like a secret. Each one was like a time capsule. A piece of your teenage soul, sealed in plastic and ink. And the CD case, so the case mattered too. If it was a slim jewel case, you'd slide in a piece of paper with your handwritten track list. Sometimes you'd decorate that too, colored pencils, magazine clippings, pieces of notebook paper with torn edges full of inside jokes or quotes from movies you both loved. You might even tape a photo inside. So whoever opened it would find more than just music, they'd find a memory. Do you remember the smell of a brand new, permanent marker? That sharp chemical scent that somehow felt comforting when you uncapped it? It was like the smell of creativity itself. The tip would leave a thick line on the smooth silver surface, and if you weren't careful, your pinky would smear the ink. But that was part of the charm. The little smudges, the off-center titles, the way one letter might be too big and the next one too small. It was yours. It's made by hand. From the heart, I'd sometimes listen to the CD while labeling it. Headphones on, legs swaying off the bed, tracing lines as the songs played. It was like painting to your own soundtrack. Each beat inspired a swirl. Each chorus made me pause, marker in midair, as I got lost in the music again. Some labels took 10 minutes, others an hour, but I never rushed, as this was the final touch. This was the moment the music became a gift either for myself or for someone I cared about. And yes, I kept many of them, stacked neatly in old shoeboxes under my bed or lined up on the shelf next to my collection of cassette tapes. Each labeled CD told a different story. Some were labeled in blocky capital letters, others in looping cursive that changed depending on my mood or who it was for. Every one of them carried a piece of who I was back then and who I was trying to be, who I hoped someone would see when they held that disc in their hands. When I'd look at those stacks years later, I could still remember what I felt when I made them. The excitement, the nervousness, the quiet joy of imagining someone else pressing play and being pulled into the world I had made for them, song by song, beat by beat. There's something beautiful about taking the time to personalize something, to make it more than just a copy of a file, more than just music. It becomes memory, emotion, art. And even now, I see an old CD lying around with faded Sharpie scribbles across its surface. I feel that tug in my chest, that warmth, that quiet kind of joy that only comes from remembering a time when everything was made with your own 2 hands, your own breath, your own care. Somewhere in every homemade CD or mixtape, there was always that one song, maybe 2, that didn't come out quite right. The beat would start a few seconds too late, or the final chorus would get chopped mid-sentence as the disc reached its burning limit or the tape hit its edge. It was frustrating at first, maybe even embarrassing when you gave it to someone else. But over time, those imperfections stopped feeling like mistakes. They became part of the charm, signature of how real it all was. There was this one mix I made called Late Night Drive, 1:47 a.m. I'd stayed up way too long crafting it, carefully placing each track to mirror how it felt to drive under yellow streetlights with the windows halfway down. But I miscalculated the timing. Last song, Radiohead's Let Down, got cut off right before the final verse. Just silence, like the disc gave up mid-thought. At first, I wanted to throw it out and start again, but I didn't. Somehow. That abrupt silence felt like the perfect ending, like the mix had fallen asleep before the sun came up. Mistakes like that taught me something. Music, when you make it yourself even, just curating, it doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful. In fact, those rough edges often made it feel more personal. A song that came in a little too late because you didn't press record fast enough. A sudden volume jump where a track from a scratchy old CD got ripped unevenly. Or a pause between songs that was just a bit too long enough for you to wonder if something was broken until the next melody finally arrived, surprising you like a sunrise after a long, still night. I remember listening to one of my early tapes on my Walkman while lying on the floor of my room, the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. A Cure song just like Heaven was playing, and just before the final swirling guitar solo, the tape clicked. The song just stopped. I stared at the ceiling, stunned, rewound it a little, then played it again, hoping maybe I'd imagined it. But no, it ended right there every time, and still I loved it. Still I played that tape so many times that the case eventually cracked, and the label faded to nothing but ghost letters. It wasn't just about technical glitches. It was about learning to embrace the unexpected. The emotional rhythm that sometimes didn't align with the mechanical one, like how some songs would start with half a beat already gone, making you wonder what you'd missed. But instead of bothering you, it became a signature quirk. That version of the song didn't exist anywhere else, only on your mix. It became your version, your edit, your exclusive cut. You started to expect the jump, the stutter, the early fade, and when you heard the original version later, it almost felt wrong to clean. It's polished. It was strange how we attached so much meaning to these little flaws. The cut-off endings became like unfinished sentences in letters from a friend. You knew what they meant. You didn't need the whole thing. Sometimes a feeling can live in just a piece of a song. One verse, one chorus. A single lyric that stayed with you, even after the rest had vanished. There were also technical reasons. CDs, glitchy burning software, background apps, stealing processing power without you knowing. But we didn't understand all of that. Back then, we just knew it was delicate. That burning a CD or recording a tape was a process that could go wrong at any moment. And that risk made it feel alive, organic, like cooking a recipe you half remembered, where every version came out just a little bit different depending on the day, the mood, the ingredients, even the silence between songs mattered. Some mixes had no gaps at all, each track flowing into the next like a river. Others had long, unexpected pauses. And in those quiet seconds, you could hear your own breath, your footsteps, the hum of the room. It reminded you that you were still there, waiting for the next memory to begin. Eventually, I started leaving some of those imperfections in on purpose. I'd fade out a track early to match a mood, or let it end awkwardly because the emotion hit harder that way. It was less about technical perfection and more about storytelling. I wasn't building playlists. I was crafting feelings, episodes, emotional timelines. And in real life, feelings don't always resolve neatly. Sometimes things are left unsaid. Sometimes people leave mid-song. And maybe that's what those cut-off endings were trying to tell us all along. I've still got a few of those old discs, in a drawer somewhere. Their surfaces are scratched, their Sharpie labels barely legible. But I know it's on them. I know where the skips are, where the audio dips, where the final lyric gets swallowed in static. And I wouldn't fix them. If I could, because each of those mistakes holds something pure, something honest. like a photograph that's slightly out of focus but still captures a perfect moment. In a world where everything's been polished and filtered, those broken, imperfect mixes remind me what it's like to make something with your own hands. 2. Care about it enough to live with its flaws, to love it not in spite of the cuts and gaps, but because of them. There was something electric about handing someone a mix you made, something raw, something curated from your soul, and watching them react to it. And there was something equally thrilling about receiving one in return. It was more than just music. Being shared was trust, vulnerability, a handshake between hearts wrapped in liner notes and track lists, scribbled in messy handwriting. Back then, before streaming platforms or endless online recommendations, your friends were the algorithm, and what they passed to you came from a real place. No data points, just passion. I remember the first time I traded a CD with Aaron from across the street. He was always a bit ahead of the curve, always coming home with band names I'd never heard before. One afternoon, he handed me a disc labeled "No Caps, No Rules," and I swear it changed the way I listened to music forever. It had Bright Eyes, Sonic Youth, a live version of a Neutral Milk Hotel track that wasn't even released on an album. Some of the songs were grainy, one skipped, another had crowd noise in the background, as if someone had ripped it straight from a bootleg cassette. But every track felt intentional, like he was telling me a secret he didn't have the words for. After that, our little group of misfits, me, Aaron, Donnie, and Lex, started trading mixes like they were currency. No one asked for anything in return, but we all knew the unspoken rule: don't just throw in hits, dig deeper. The B-sides, the hidden gems, the songs that never made it to the radio. And more importantly, don't just throw tracks together. Build a story. Make them feel something. It was a kind of analog. Alchemy. One part art, one part intimacy. I still remember the mix Donnie gave me the week before her family moved out of town. It was wrapped in an old comic book sleeve and labeled in pink glitter pen. This is what Missing You might sound like. It started with a soft acoustic song I didn't recognize, and halfway through it bled into a lo-fi piano piece that made my throat tighten. I listened to it every night that summer, and every time. It felt like she was sitting there with me, just on the other side of the speaker. That mix said more than 100 goodbye letters ever could. Discovering new bands. Through these trades wasn't just about the music. It was about finding pieces of your identity in the melodies and lyrics other people had lived with first. You didn't just learn about a band. You learned why that song mattered to someone you cared about. And then, by association, it started to matter to you too. You'd hear a track by the Dandy Warhols or the Microphones and immediately remember the person who introduced it to you. Where you were, what the air smelled like, what was breaking your heart or building you back up in that moment. No digital platform could replicate that feeling. You couldn't scroll through your friends' suggestions and feel the weight of their silence after a specific lyric. You couldn't see the doodles they drew around a band's name or the way they underlined. A track with 2 stars and the words "don't skip." These weren't algorithms trying to keep you engaged. They were people reaching out through song, hoping to be heard. To be understood, we had this ritual at school: Friday swaps. You'd come in with 1 or 2 freshly burned CDs hidden in your backpack like contraband, and during lunch or between classes, you'd slip them to someone. No fanfare, just a nod, maybe a grin. It was a silent agreement, a contract of curiosity. That weekend, you'd press play and listen with your full attention. Because you wanted to know what the other person saw in those songs. You didn't skip. You didn't shuffle. You listened from start to finish, because someone had built this journey just for you. Sometimes those mixes surprised you. You'd discover bands with names that sounded like inside jokes or strange poetry. Songs with weird intros or abrupt endings, but they stuck with you. You'd find yourself humming a chorus while walking home or scribbling lyrics on your notebook. Margins. And when Monday came, you'd tell your friend, "Track 7. That hit me hard, and they'd nod like they already knew it would. Music back then wasn't just background noise. It was revelation, discovery, and those trades. They were like holding a mirror up to someone else's heart, and sometimes seeing your own reflection staring back. Eventually, we all drifted. New cities, new jobs, new devices that didn't even have CD drives. Sometimes, when I'm unpacking old boxes or organizing drawers I haven't touched in years, I find one of those mixes. The handwriting is faded, the plastic case cracked, but the moment I pop it into an old player and press play, it's like being 16 again. It's like slipping into a version of myself that still believed the right song, shared at the right time, could change everything, and maybe it still can. There was a specific kind of heartbreak that only those of us from the burned CD era will ever truly understand. You'd spend an entire hour, sometimes longer if your computer was moody, painstakingly burning a mix onto a blank disc. The machine would hum like it was conjuring a spell. The percentage bar would creep forward, agonizingly slow. And you'd sit there, holding your breath through every phase, preparing, writing, finalizing. When it finally finished, you'd pop the disc out like it was holy. A relic of your taste, your time your soul pressed into thin plastic. And then, just when you thought you'd made something perfect, you'd slide it into the stereo in the living room. And nothing. Silence. Or worse. A garbled hum, a skipping beat, a message blinking back at you like a curse. Disc error, the stereo wouldn't read it. The CD tray would spit it out like it was offended. You'd stand there staring at this once precious object, now rejected by the only machine that truly mattered. The frustration hit like a punch to the chest. You'd double-check the burn settings. You'd curse your off-brand CDRs. You'd wonder if the track order was too long, or if the finalization failed. Deep down, none of that mattered. All you wanted was to hear your creation play the way you imagined it. There were nights I stayed up far too late, trying again and again to get it right. Burning version 2, version 3, even version 4, each one tested like a science experiment. Across multiple devices, the car stereo, the portable CD player, the boombox in the garage, sometimes only one would accept it. And yet, despite the technical setbacks, we always tried again. We didn't just give up. We couldn't. There was something sacred about the effort. The fact that it took so long was part of the magic. Burning a CD wasn't like dragging songs into a playlist. It required patience. You had to make choices. You had to really know what you wanted the listener to feel first, second, last. And when that disc didn't work, it felt like the universe had ignored your carefully built symphony. It felt like being silenced. But we always went back to the drawing board. I remember one time I tried to make a mix for my cousin's birthday. I chose the songs meticulously, starting with something upbeat and nostalgic, sneaking in an acoustic cover of her favorite pop song and closing with a track that had become our summer anthem. It took over an hour to burn. The laptop made a sound I'd never heard before, like it was struggling with the weight of the music. But when it finished, I was proud. Until we got to her party and the living room stereo refused to play it. My heart sank right there in front of everyone. She looked at me, shrugged, and smiled. "Let's just listen on your Discman," she said. So we sat by the window, just the two of us, passing the headphones back and forth, one bud each, laughing when a track skipped, whispering over the intro of the next. In the end, the stereo didn't matter. The connection did. Still that stubborn hope, the hope that maybe this time the stereo would accept your creation, never left us. Every new blank CD was a chance at redemption, a shot at making something that worked, not just technically, but emotionally. Burning a CD taught us patience. It taught us resilience. And strangely enough, it taught us love. Because when you put your heart into something and it doesn't go right, the real test is whether you walk away or try again. We always tried again. That ritual became a metaphor for how we approached everything else. Relationships, dreams, mistakes, life was full of errors and corrupted files of moments that didn't land the way we intended. But we kept burning, kept trying to make it work, kept searching for the stereo that would finally play our song all the way through. And on those rare nights when it all clicked, the disc burned perfectly, the stereo read it, and your mix played from start to finish without a single skip. It felt like magic, like the universe had stopped spinning just to listen with you. Because it wasn't just about the music. It was about the effort, the waiting, the little imperfections, the moments you almost gave up but didn't. There was a moment, always quiet, always private, that began the same way each time. A soft click, a pause, then the music began. Just like that, the world outside shifted into something distant, less urgent, less sharp. With headphones on and eyes closed, everything else faded. That old desk, the piles of homework, the hum of the neighbor's lawnmower, even your own racing thoughts, they softened, shrank, and disappeared, all because you pressed play. It wasn't about running away. It was about stepping sideways into a dimension where emotions made more sense, where lyrics echoed the things you couldn't say out loud, where melodies filled in the silences you didn't know were empty. You could walk through the loudest chaos, school hallways, downtown streets, family dinners with underlying tension, and still find peace alone in that soundscape. A full world that belonged only to you. I remember lying on my bed, the ceiling, fans spinning above me, headphones cradling my ears like armor. The music would start, and instantly I'd be somewhere else, floating, detached from time, from pressure, from the weight of becoming someone. A sad song would amplify every unspoken ache, and yet it would comfort me more than anything anyone said. An upbeat track could lift me right out of a bad day and pull my thoughts towards some hazy, imagined freedom. That power of disappearing, without moving, was everything. Sometimes it was in motion that the escape felt strongest. Walking home after school, my backpack heavy with books I didn't care about, I'd scroll through my device until I found that song, the one that could. Soundtrack the sky turning gold, the wind hitting just right, the rhythm syncing with my steps. I'd feel untouchable, like the world was a movie and I had the only copy of the score. No one else heard what I heard. No one else saw the sidewalk shimmer the way I did, each beat coloring the world differently. Music didn't just accompany. Life, it redefined it. The beauty was in the choice. It chose what to play, and in doing so, you chose how to feel. Sad, angry, hopeful, heartbroken, in love with someone who didn't know you existed. There was a song for that, whole album even. Pressing play became a ritual of control, a quiet rebellion against whatever the day had thrown at you. Didn't need anyone to fix you. You had headphones, you had sound, you had escape. And unlike real escape, this one didn't come with guilt. You weren't abandoning anything, you were recharging, reframing, relearning how to feel without drowning in it. That's what people never understood about our generation and our obsession with music. It wasn't just background noise. It was therapy. It was sanctuary. It was the one place we could go where everything made sense, even when nothing else. I'd sit in the back seat during long car rides, parents arguing softly in the front, and I'd zone out with a mixtape I'd made weeks before. I can still remember the way the trees blurred outside the window, their branches dancing to the drums, their shadows in sync with a bass line no one else heard. I didn't care where we were going. I'd already arrived. That ability to retreat, to press play, and vanish felt like a kind of magic. Not all escapes require doors. Sometimes all it takes is a chord, a voice, a looped melody. That's where we healed. That's where we dreamed. And even now, years later, when the world grows too loud, I find myself reaching instinctively for my earbuds, my playlists, my refuge. Because some habits aren't just habits, they're lifelines. Pressing play will always, always be my way out. There's something unshakably different about how we listened to music back then. It's not just in sound quality or format, but in spirit. In those days, before streaming, before the shuffle button turned everything into background noise, listening to music was an event, a ritual. You sat with it. You gave it your full attention. There was no skipping after 10 seconds, no algorithm rushing you to the next trending hit. You pressed play and you stayed. You felt, you listened. You slowed down. It wasn't about convenience. In fact, it was the opposite. Playing music meant effort. Rewinding a tape to just the right spot. Ejecting a CD to swap discs. Making sure the batteries in your player didn't die mid-track. These little acts of patience taught you something that no fast-forward button ever could. Presence. Being there. Letting the music take its time instead of rushing it. It breathed inside your chest until the lyrics felt like your own diary written by someone you'd never met. I think about the late nights, lying in bed with the lights off. Headphones buried in the pillows so my parents wouldn't hear. There were no distractions, no notifications popping up. Just me and the sound. A voice, a guitar, a synth line. A single song could stretch out forever. I'd listen to the same track 3-4 times in a row, not because I was trying to catch up on something, but because I didn't want to move on. I didn't need to. It's what music gave us. The permission to stay in one place long enough to feel everything we'd been avoiding all day. Back then, we didn't need 20 playlists. For 20 moods, we had one mixtape, and it held a piece of us. One burned CD that took hours to assemble. Each track chosen like it was sacred. You listened to the same album over and over, not out of lack of variety, but because it was yours. You formed a relationship with those songs. They didn't just visit you, they lived with you. It became the soundtrack of moments you didn't even realize were important until years later. And now, when I look back, I realize how rare that kind of stillness has become. How rare it is to let yourself fall into a song without reaching for your phone, to hear the crackle at the start of a track, and wait for the emotion to unfold instead of rushing to the chorus. We live in a world that moves too fast, where everything is on demand, but music, real music, was never meant to be background noise. It was meant to slow you down, to ground you, to remind you that you were human. I remember one evening in particular, rain tapping against the window, the glow of a single lamp in my room, and a tape in the deck playing one of those songs that didn't need words to say something. I didn't do anything except sit there. I didn't scroll, didn't multitask. I just listened. I just was. And for those few minutes, the world felt softer, kinder, like it understood me. That's what I miss the most. It's not just the tapes or the CDs or the endless headphone cords, but the slowness, the intentionality, without rushing. Back then, listening wasn't about filling silence. It was about creating it. A sacred, quiet place where your thoughts could settle, where emotions could stretch their limbs and find shape and sound. So now, when I press play on something old, something crackling, something raw, I remember what it used to mean. I remember how to listen, not just hear. I remember that music at its best doesn't just accompany life, it teaches you how to live it more slowly, more deeply, more honestly. And maybe in the end, that's why it stayed with us. Not because of the format, or the tech, or the nostalgia, but because it gave us a way to pause in a world that never wanted us to stop, a way to breathe, a way to be. And we didn't even realize it then, but those moments with music, they were the beginning of learning how to love ourselves in silence.